So let's start by talking about what classifications are. So they're essentially a means of assigning demographic or descriptive information within your NVivo project. They're most useful if you want to run queries later on. In other words, if you'd like to ask questions about your coding. So for example, you might like to compare what was said about a particular topic by the males versus the females. They can be used for other purposes, but queries would be the main reason for setting classifications up. There are two types of classifications in NVivo, source and case classifications. I'm going to have a look at both of those so that you can understand the difference. Source classifications are used if you want to categorize your sources in some way. They're most useful for literature reviews, but you might also use them for policy analysis, media analysis, or any other project that is based on documents. In comparison, case classifications are used to provide information about your cases, and that might be the people or organisations within your project. It's whatever your unit of analysis is. Now it's a little bit of a tricky distinction to understand, so I'd like to take a look at an example of each of those. So let's say you had a literature review project, and each piece of literature you work with will have particular characteristics that can be assigned to it, such as the year of publication, the type of literature it is, and perhaps what discipline the authors are from. NVivo allows you to assign a classification to each piece of literature, and within that you can assign something called attributes to reflect these different characteristics. That means that later down the track you can make comparisons across the literature. So, for example, what were authors saying about this topic prior to 2010 compared to more recent years? Or does the nursing literature talk about this topic differently to the psychologists? So that's an example of a source classification. Let's take a look also at an example of a case classification. So you may have interviewed a bunch of people. Let's say you're interested in their attitude towards physical activity. And you've coded all of the information from their transcripts, and that's stored together in the thematic nodes that you've set up. So you might have a node for barriers to physical activity and one for preferred physical activities, etc. Now at that stage, all of the information you've coded is mixed together within the nodes. However, you might have noticed some differences when you were doing the coding, so people might be responding differently in terms of their attitude and behaviour in relation to physical activity. So within your overall sample, you might want to pull out what just the children said about the topic. What were their preferred activities? Or perhaps take a look at the men. What were the barriers they faced in participating in physical activity, and was that different to the woman? Alternatively, you might take a case study approach where each family group is the unit of analysis, and you could compare across different types of families, for example, low versus high socioeconomic status. In order to ask those types of questions, you need to set up classifications. So essentially NVivo needs to know who the adults are, the children are, etc., so that you can later run queries.